Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We're going through these songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas that Achyutananda Prabhu kindly translated for us back in the 1970s. And tonight we're on a song called Guru Parampara. In the songbook, it does not give credit, at least in the original one, to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There's no mention of the author, but here online we see that he's the author of this. Song name, Krishna Hoite Chaturamukha. Official name is Guru Parampara. I learned this tune from Drishtajumna Swami many years ago. Krishna Hoite Chaturamukha, Hoy Krishna Sevanmukha, Brahma Hoite Naraderamati Narada Hoite Vyasa Madhva Kohe Vyasa Dasa Purna Pragya Padmana Bhagati Hari Madhava Bangshe Akshobhya Paramahangshe Shisha Boli Angikara Kohe Akshobhyara Shisha Jaya Tirtaname Parichaya Taradasye Jnana Sindhu Tore Taha Hoite Dayaniti Taratasa Vidyanidhi Rajendra Hoilo Taha Ate Tahara Kinkora Jaya Dharmaname Parichaya Parampara Janno Balo Mate Jaya Dharma Dashekyati Shipurusho Tamma Jati Tahate Brahmanya Tirtha Suri Vyasa Tirtha Taradasa Lakshmi Pati Vyasa Dasa Taha Hoite Madhavendra Puri Madhavendra Puri Bara Shishya Bara Shishvara Nityananda Sri Advaita Vibhu Ishvara Puri Caitanya Korinlen Shri Caitanya Jagat Guru Gaura Mahaprabhu Shri Caitanya Radha Krishna Nahe Anya Rupanuga Janera Jivan Vishwambara Priyankara Shri Swarupa Damodara Shri Goswami Rupasana Tahana Rupa Priya Mahajana Jivara Gunatahana Tara Priya Kavi Krishna Das Krishna Dasa Priya Bara Narottama Seva Param Jarapada Vishwanatha Asha Vishwanatha Bhaktasatta Baladeva Jagannatha Tara Priya Shri Bhakti Vinoda Mahabhagavat Abhara Shri Gaura Kishora Bara Hari Bhajanete Chara Moda Iharam Paramahansha Gorangira Nija Bangsha Tadera Charane Mama Gahati Amit Seba Udasina Namete Tridandi Dinam Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Shri Varshabhana Avibhara Sada Sevya Seva Param Tahara Daita Dasa Nam Tarapradan Pracharako Shri Bhakti Vedanta Namo Patita Janite Doya Dhamma. Translation. In the beginning of creation, science devotional service was received by the four-headed Brahma from the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Devarshi Narada's understanding of this divine science was obtained from Brahma, the great sage Krishna Vyas, who was empowered to compile the Vedic literatures, became a disciple of Devarshi Narada. Sripad Madhvacharya, the founder of the Shuddhadvaita school of Vedanta philosophy, who visited Vyasadeva at Badrikashram in the 13th century to learn from him Vedanta philosophy, calls himself a servant of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas. Purna Vyagya, Purna Pragya Tirtha Madhva is the guru and sole refuge of Padmanabha Tirtha. 2. The other principal disciples of Madhva are Nrihari Tirtha and Madhva Tirtha. Madhva Tirtha accepted the great Paramahansa Akshobhya Tirtha as a disciple. The principal disciple of Akshobhya Tirtha was known as Jayatirtha. Jayatirtha's service was for his disciple Jnanasindhu. 3. Dayanidhi received the science of devotional service from Jnanasindhu, and the servant of Dayanidhi was Vidyanidhi, Vidya Dhiraj Tirtha. Rajendra Tirtha became a disciple of Vidya Dhiraj Tirtha. Rajendra Tirtha's servant was known as Jayadharma or Vijayadvaj Tirtha. In this way, you should properly understand this disciplic succession. 4. The great sannyasi Sri Purushottam Tirtha received his knowledge in the service of his guru, Vijayadvaj Tirtha, Jayadharma. The principal disciple of Purushottam Tirtha was Subramanya Tirtha. His servant was the great Vyasa Tirtha, Vyasa Roy. Vyasa Tirtha's servant was Lakshmi Pati Tirtha, whose disciple was Madhavendra Puri Goswami. That's interesting because I was reading somewhere last night that Lakshmi Pati Tirtha was another name for Madhavendra Puri Goswami, but here it says that Lakshmi Pati Tirtha had as his disciple Madhavendra Puri Goswami. So it appears that they're actually not the same personality, at least according to this verse. 5. The chief disciple of Madhavendra Puri was Ishvara Puri, and 2 of his other disciples were the renowned incarnations of Godhead, Sri Nityananda and Advaita Acharya. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the spiritual preceptor of all the worlds, made Ishvara Puri greatly fortunate by accepting him as his spiritual master. Mahaprabhu, Sri Caitanya, is non-different from Sri Radha and Krishna, and is the very life of those Vaishnavas who follow Sri Rupa Goswami. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Sanatan Goswami were the givers of great happiness to Vishwambar, Sri Chaitanya. The great souls, Jiva Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami, became very dear to Rupa Goswami. Jiva Goswami was a disciple of Rupa Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami, a disciple of Advaita Acharya's disciple, Yadunandan Acharya, was accepted by Rupa and Sanatan as their third brother. Raghunath Das Goswami's beloved student was Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Krishnadas Kaviraj was an intimate friend of Lokanath Goswami. They lived together in Vrindavan and always discussed the topics of Krishna with one another. Lokanath Goswami, a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit, had only one disciple whose name was Narottam Das. Narottam Das was always engaged in the service of his guru, and he also engaged himself in the service of his guru's intimate friend. Thus, he became very dear to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. To serve the feet of Narottam Das Thakur was the only desire of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who was the fourth Acharya in disciplic succession from Narottam Das. 8. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was the Shiksha Guru, instructing spiritual master of Baladev Vijayabhushan, to whom he taught the precepts of Srimad Bhagavatam. Interesting here, they're mentioning how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was the Shiksha Guru of Baladev Vijayabhushan. It's not stressing that Diksha Guru is necessarily the most important. And Jagannath Das Babaji was a very prominent Acharya after Sri Baladev Vijayabhushan and was the beloved Shiksha Guru of Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Again, emphasis being placed on Shiksha Guru. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's intimate friend and associate was the eminent Mahabhagavat Sri Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, whose sole joy was found in Hari Bhajan. So that's something that we can aspire for, the sole joy of Hari Bhajan. These great saintly Vaishnavas are all Paramahansas, or devotees of the highest order, and they are all part of Lord Gauranga's own spiritual family. Their holy feet are my refuge. I have no real interest in devotional services, and I am a poor and lowly Tridandi sannyasi named Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The renowned Sri Varshbanavi Daita Das, the initiated name of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, is always engaged in the service of his spiritual master, Srila Gaurakishore Das Babaji. His foremost disciple preacher is Sri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has spread the message of Lord Caitanya throughout the world and is thus a reservoir of mercy and compassion for all fallen souls. So I wonder who wrote that last verse, because obviously, although Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is the author of this song, chances are he didn't write that last verse, since it's glorifying our Srila Prabhupada as having spread the message of Lord Chaitanya throughout the whole world. Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta departed, I think it was in 1936. Amongst different mats, and not to say that he's not Trikalagya, and that he, of course, was able to predict the future. But I'm just wondering if it was Achyutananda or someone else that composed that. Amongst different mats and disciplic successions under the guidance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the ninth verse is either replaced or additions beyond the ninth verse. This verse 9a is the verse glorifying Srila Prabhupada. What a wonderful bhajan. Okay, so we will stop sharing that page and we'll move on to tonight's Bhagavad-gita. Okay, so we're on text 13, chapter 1 of Bhagavad-gita. And in this text 13, Bhishma can foresee the outcome of the battle, but still, as a matter of duty, he tries to encourage Duryodhana. Text 13. Tata shankascha beryascha panavanaka gomukha sahasaiva vyahanyanta sa shabdas tumalo bhavat. Tata thereafter Shanka, conch shells, cha also, Berya, bugles, cha, and Panava Anaka, trumpets and drums, Go Mukha, horns, Sahasa, all of a sudden, Eva certainly, Ab Abhya Han Yanta, being simultaneously sounded, Saha, that Shabda, combined sound, Tumulaha, tumultuous Abhavat, became. I don't know how loud are those geese that are honking. I don't know if it's interfering with the reading or not. I live beside a river, and the ducks, the geese get together in the evening sometimes, and they have a party. So the translation for that is, after that, the conch shells, bugles, trumpets, drums, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. And on to text 14. So this is going to address indications of victory for the Pandavas. Tata shvaitair hayar yukte mahati syandane shtitau madhava pandavaschaiva divyau shankau pradad matuhu. Tata thereafter shvetai, by white yai horses, yukte being yoked with, mahati in the great, shandain chariot, shtitao so situated, madhavaha Krishna the husband of the goddess of fortune, pandavaha Arjuna the son of Pandu, cha also, eva certainly, divyao transcendental, shankao conch shells, pradad matuhu sounded. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Excuse me for a second. I just went to look for another commentary to see if I have another commentary on this section of the Bhagavad-gita. We're reading from verse number 14. Okay. No. Okay, so on the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Report. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayas tu Pandu Putranam Yesham Pakshe Janardanaha. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna, as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu, or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated was donated by Agni, the fire god. to Arjuna. And this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides, wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. Sounds like a very powerful chariot. Now, let's see, we have a class by Srila Prabhupada on this section. And Srila Prabhupada begins by saying, so there are mentioned various types of musical instruments. Those instruments are no longer in use, but different types of bugles, drums, kettle drums, as they use in modern days. So the same principle. By musical instruments, the soldiers are kept alive so they can fight nicely. So Shabdas Tumalo Bhavat, when simultaneously all the instruments were sounded, it became tumultuous. Sometimes I'm just thinking about during the Civil War, or maybe there's other examples, when the Yankees or the Confederates, the Union and the South in America were going to war. There was, the Dixie tune, or I guess all of that's been lost since a lot of words are like almost nuclear by comparison. But in the next verse, Srila Prabhupada quotes, on the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot, drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. And Srila Prabhupada says, so you have seen the picture? Krishna is driving 4 white horses. So here's one edition of the Bhagavad-gita I have. And on this cover, I only see 3 white horses. But Prabhupada says there's 4. And of course, we see other editions. There are 4 white horses. So, not possible to be seen, unfortunately, on the new quote-unquote revised version of the Bhagavad-gita. But let's see. How many horses are on the original cover? Yeah, we can see 4 here. The 4 white horses of Krishna and Arjuna. So Prabhupada is reading from the purport. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. Krishna is transcendental. Narayana Parovyaktat. Krishna is not of this material world. Krishna's body, Krishna's activities, everything of Krishna, they are transcendental. They are not of this material world. Divyam, in the Chatusloki Bhagavatam, it is said, when Krishna was instructing Brahma, Aham evasam evagre, before this material creation, I was existing. In the Vedas also it is said, Eko Narayana Asit, before creation, only Narayan was there. So the Bhagavatam verse that was quoted is one of the Chatusloki, one of the foremost Bhagavatam verses, nutshell verses. So Krishna's position is always transcendental. He is not any creation of this material world. But because he comes just like a human being and acts also just like human being, those who are less intelligent, avajananti, they think of Krishna as ordinary human being. Avajananti mang mudha, 9:11, mudha. Mudha means asses, or less intelligent class of men. They cannot understand Krishna's position. Krishna's position is always transcendental. When Arjuna inquired from him about his instruction to sun god, Krishna said, Imam vivasvate yogam proktavam aham avyayam. This bhakti yogam, as mentioned in the Bhagavad-gita, Bhagavad-gita is bhakti yogam, to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this literature is also transcendental. Bhakti is also transcendental. Bhakti is not any activities of this material world. Janma karma me divyam, Bhagavad-gita 4:9. So bhakti is activity in relationship with Krishna. Therefore, it is not material. Sagunan samatityaitan, brahmabhuya yakalpate, mangchayo vyavicharina, bhakti yogina sevate. Bhagavad-gita 14:26. Bhakti yoga is transcendental. And because Krishna is transcendental, you cannot understand Krishna by any material method. Therefore, Krishna says, Bhaktyamam abhijananti. The method also is transcendental, not of this material world. So if we can understand simply these facts, that Krishna is transcendental, Krishna's name is transcendental, Krishna's form is transcendental, Satchidananda Vigraha, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha, Bhagavad-gita 5:1. Krishna's body is Satchidananda, not body like this. This body is Asat, Achit, and Nirananda, just the opposite. The material body is Asat. Asat means temporary. It will not exist. But Krishna's body is not like that. Krishna's body is eternal. That is Chit, Sat Chit, full of knowledge. So less intelligent class of men, they cannot understand Krishna. Therefore, Shastra says, Atakshi Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Grayam Indriyai. It's actually from the Padma Purana, but they're giving credit to C.C. Madhya 17:136. These Indriya, these material senses, cannot speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is not possible. Shrama Evihi Kevalam 1:2-8. That is simply laboring, wasting time. Krishna should be understood as Krishna says. He can explain himself. Nobody can explain. Because our senses are imperfect, we are deficient by 4 kinds of faults. We commit mistake, we are illusioned with imperfect senses, we try to speak transcendental knowledge, therefore cheating. They will say, probably, maybe, this is the so-called scientist language. That means imperfect knowledge. Still, they want to teach. This is cheating. Knowledge must be perfect. Then you can teach others. So our process is to receive the perfect knowledge from the perfect source and distribute it. We don't manufacture knowledge. Therefore, we are presenting Bhagavad-gita as it is. The Bhagavad-gita is already perfect. Why shall I interpret with my imperfect senses? This is cheating. But people want to be cheated. Vanchita, vanchaka, sampradaya. The whole world is full of cheaters and cheated because they want to be cheated. There are so many cheaters. They don't want the real thing. Here is the real thing. Bhagavad-gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, speaking personally about himself. Siddhanta Prabhu Ki Jai.
Haribo.
Panchakalpa to you, dear sir.
Kripa Sindhu Bhavacha, Pachitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. What do we got, a duet tonight?
That's a nice way to put it. Were you originally born in New York?
No.
Because you seem to have like a New York sense of humor.
Well, thank you. I take that as a compliment. I don't know, but
no, because the New York stand-up comics, they're like some of the best, right? Okay. Where were you born?
Jerry Seinfeld. I was born in St. Louis, but moved to LA when I was 2 years old.
Okay. Did you meet Jerry Seinfeld?
No.
Okay.
I met and did some work for Rodney Dangerfield.
Was he easy to get along with?
He was
likable.
He's very likable guy, very nice guy, but you don't want to tell him any jokes. He gets offended if you tell him some joke because he writes his own material.
Okay. Well, that requires, Prabhupada said it somewhere. Maybe you'll know better, that it takes some intelligence to be able to tell jokes, to have a wit, right?
Yeah, he was very witty. He did tell me, though, he had just married recently anyway, within the last year or two from when I met him. He married a young wife. This is his
Yeah.
second wife, and she was from Utah. I think she was a Mormon. Very pretty lady. But he told me, he said, when she was there, it was at my house where I had my studio. And he told me, he said, she's a very nice lady, very nice person. But her cooking is so bad that the flies chipped in to help fix the screen door.
That takes a little wit to come up with that. So anyway, I'm so happy that you're here. Ekanath said he was going to try to make it, but who knows? Something may come up. Jivan Mukta said he was going to make it.
Did you watch the video I sent you?
Well, I didn't know you sent me a video.
No, I sent you the link to you were asking about the quote.
Right.
About women.
Right.
Devotee women.
Yeah, I'll send that to Jivan Mukta.
Did you get it or not?
Yeah, I saw that you had sent something about that. You said on it's at this found at such and such a point.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Number 31.
Thank you. Yeah, so
go ahead, take the time, do it now before you forget. Does he have a WhatsApp number?
Jivan Mukta?
Yeah.
Yeah. What, you want me to send it to him right now?
Yes. How long does that take?
Okay, not long. You're fired up. Okay, where are you? Where's your message here? Siddhanta. Okay, DVD. On the flash drive about 1711. Okay. All right. And where is Jivan Mukta? All right, there he is. Siddhanta Prabhu and I are waiting for you. Here is the reference to the quote. I was sharing earlier about Prabhupada appreciating his daughters.
His female disciples.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's done.
Good.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, so the verses I've just finished reading are all about how Bhishma can actually foresee the outcome of the battle, but as a matter of duty, he tries to encourage Duryodhana. And just finished reading about victory. Well, we're in the process right now of reading about victory. It's signs or indications of victory for the Pandavas. And they're blowing different bugles and kettle drums. And Prabhupada was saying that sometimes in a war, in order to enliven the soldiers, to be lively for the fight, and they'd have like different musical instruments playing. But I was thinking, now that the wars are kind of nuclear, then I don't think that tradition of, maybe they're playing hard rock or something inside the tank. I don't know, but it's not quite the same. Yeah, so please continue. Why should we interpret?
Okay, let me move this down. Okay, do you want to move it up just a paragraph? Move it up the screen a little bit. Okay. So this is what, his purport?
Yeah, this is a class that Prabhupada's giving in England on this.
Oh, it's a class. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what can you read the verse to me? What the verse said? Just
yeah. I'll just go back up here. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. And I was just making the point that on the cover of the new Gita, which is very similar painting to this one, you can't really tell that there's 4 white horses there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, very small.
Yeah, and but here you can see
Yeah.
that there are four white horses.
Yeah,
Very clear.
classic.
Yes, the classic. Correct. I had a very nice talk with Purna Pragya Prabhu last night. Do you know him?
No.
Okay, he's very interesting. He analyzed every single edit that was done by Jayadvaita.
Yeah, is he an English scholar?
Well, he's written many books, like many compilations of Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said he has a new book coming out. So he has a scholarly side to him.
Where's he from?
He's in Alachua now.
He's an American, Canadian?
Yeah, he's American.
Okay.
Yeah. But very interesting chap and very cool-headed, like just because he...
So did he agree with any of the edits that were made?
Good question. Yes, I asked him because he said it's a very complex topic. And then he mentioned that I said, can you give me a ballpark figure? Like how many of those edits would you say that, you feel are essential? And I'm just going to pull up the conversation here. And he said approximately he thought about 20% of what was done are essential.
Okay.
And that the rest was really not so much required. He gives a very nice explanation here. He says, the argument that the philosophy was not changed, because I said, do you think the philosophy actually got changed in the course of any of the editing? And he said, the argument that the philosophy was not changed is foolish. The 11 zonal acharyas did not change the philosophy, but they drove away hundreds of devotees and created division. Same with the Gaudiya Math. They didn't change the philosophy after the disappearance of Bhaktisiddhanta. It's the change of attitude of applying the philosophy. You can keep the philosophy, but be proud, arrogant, and craving worship, etc. It is also the philosophy to be humble and respectful and to follow the orders of the guru. And so, yeah, those are some of his points.
Well, that's not really addressing the editing changes as opposed to...
Going back, I said, okay, I was in Mayapur studying Bhakti Shastri under Jayadvaita Swami in 2007, whatever it was. I was with 40 young men, and I was the only Prabhupada disciple taking the course. No one noticed anything that was too out of the ordinary, because Jayadvaita Swami every once in a while would say, and so now, time for some editorial entertainment. And then he put it up on the big screen, the original manuscript, which maybe he's the only one that has access to it. I don't know. So I'm not saying that I agree with every one of his edits, but it seemed that there is value to some of them. But how many are essential? I have no idea. So Purna Pragya Prabhu answered, I have a very good idea. On his website, and when he or Dravida speaks, they point out obvious mistakes. And so everyone is convinced that they are good. The truth is that there are many glaring mistakes and many not so glaring. So they are right in that sense. What they are not appreciated for is changing a great quantity more of what was all right. I will make it easy for you. First, you know that Prabhupada accepted basically everything and only made a few corrections. Then you must read the Rascal Editor's conversation from June 1977. Have you read that?
Yes.
Oh, I've not read it yet. Did you find something revealing there? Did something stand out for you?
Well, it was, yeah, I mean, I'll have to write it for you. I'll write it out for you.
Thank you. By doing so, you will know that Prabhupada was very fearful of changes. Just look at Bhagavad-gita chapter 1, verse 1. There is no mistake. Everything is there correctly. Hayagriva was an English instructor and poet. He knew how to use the English language more than just mechanically following rules. Jayadvaita Swami changed 1:1, and I would bet my life that Prabhupada would not have approved if presented to him. You look at the verse and rest assured there are 100 more ridiculous than that. Taste one grain of rice and know about the whole pot. So he's saying, yeah, there were mistakes, but he was not, Jayadvaita Swami was not so much in approval of Hayagriva. Prabhupada accepted the Blessed Lord, but especially for India, I would use the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because I asked that question. Would have Prabhupada used the Blessed Lord said? Like, that's not exactly Prabhupada's language, right? It's not the way Prabhupada, but Hayagriva did. So, but I said, but yet Prabhupada gave many classes and he used that terminology. Like, so it seemed that he accepted it. Yeah. So, so those are some of the points of Purna Pragya Prabhu. He's very thoughtful. Okay. He's cool-headed. He's not an offensive person. Okay. Yeah, I like him.
Good.
So, yeah, may something good come out of that. I don't know. He was saying that Bhanu Swami is on, I asked him about, there's an editorial, not an editorial board, but there's a review board.
Garuda, you mean?
I don't know if Garuda is on that board, but Bhanu Swami is. And he was saying that Pradyumna was asked to be on it, but he didn't agree to be on it, to review the changes, the edits.
Okay.
And he was saying that Bhanu Swami is not so much in agreement, but he said basically that review board is divided in half. There's like half that are for the edits, and the other half is less for them. So I don't know, where that's going to go. But anyway, coming back here, where were we? Do you remember? Why should we interpret? Okay, there you go.
Why should we interpret? Does it mean that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Authority, left something unexplained to be interpreted later on by some rascals? No, but the rascals dare. They interpret. That is cheating. That is another fault. There are 640 to 45 editions of Bhagavad-gita. Simply cheating. Amongst them, there are big scholars, not scholars, all rascals, but they cheat. They pose themselves as scholars, and people want to be cheated. So they take their words. So they cannot understand Krishna, cheated. They take the shelter of the cheaters, therefore they are cheated. So the Maya is very strong. Maya always dictates so that we may be cheated. Why you are taking Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Don't take. He is ordinary man. You can be also equal with Krishna. You also become God. You become also incarnation. This is going on. And so people flock there because they want to be cheated. What Krishna says, they will not accept. Krishna says, Sarva Dharmam Parityajam Mamekam Saranam. Bhagavad-gita 1866. Only take to Krishna consciousness. Sarva Dharmam. Because any dharma which is not approved by the Supreme Lord, Krishna, that is not dharma. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Srimad Bhagavatam 6:319.
Do you know what that last line means? Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam?
No, you go ahead, tell me.
Yeah, Prabhupada translates that as being that only God can give religion, that man is not capable of making up religion, even though, what is his name? Ron L. Hubbard?
L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard. He thought he could make up a religion. But
he said that's the way to make money.
Okay. Well, I guess he knew what he was talking about. Hi, Krishna Chandra Patni. Welcome.
Haribol Krishna Chandra Nagapatni. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
By popular demand, Siddhanta Prabhu has come back.
Yay.
Right. Very good.
Of one.
Wonderful.
I thought you'd all abandoned me tonight. I was grateful that Siddhanta showed up. So, Krishna, okay. So, yeah, what we're reading about right now is verse 14, Bhagavad-gita. Would you like to say something about what is verse about, Siddhanta Prabhu?
Well, let's see. Well, what comes to mind is my own memory of Prabhupada. When we performed a play for him in Denver, Colorado.
Wow. What year was that?
Probably he was there, 1975, June and July of 75.
That must have been just after he left, either before he came, because he came to Chicago. When I saw Prabhupada, it was July 4th weekend in Chicago, July 4th. So would have this been before?
75?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been just before that then.
Okay. Yeah.
And we put on a play called Pondraka.
Okay. With the fake arms.
Yeah, fake arms, and he pretended to be Krishna.
Which part did you play?
I was a bad guy. I don't remember the name of the personality that I portrayed.
One of the demons.
But yeah, what demon? Yeah, one of Pondraka's buddies. But the significant thing that I do remember was that we had planted some pyrotechnics, a bomb actually, like a cherry bomb inside the temple room.
Whose idea was that?
We had a lot of great performers in Denver. We put on plays many weeks.
You wanted to make this really realistic.
It was it was theatrical for sure. So when Krishna kills Pondraka with an arrow, or however he killed him with his disc, I forget how he killed him. But as soon as that the killing took place, then we had somebody in the audience set off this cherry bomb. It was a loud explosion.
Things are loud.
Very loud. And in Denver, the temple room is kind of cavernous anyway.
Yeah.
So the whole sound echoed throughout the temple room. And by that time I was dead. Somebody else killed me. But I positioned myself where I could be lying on the floor but look at Prabhupada, because I knew what was coming. And I wanted to see Prabhupada's reaction. And Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasa, enjoying the play. But as soon as Pondraka was killed and the explosion went off, Prabhupada jumped back in the Vyasa. No one expected it, including Prabhupada. Mm-hmm. He jumped back in the Vyasa, but then he realized that it was theatrics, and he smiled. He appreciated the theatrical effort that we put on to bring the whole killing to life. So we know Prabhupada loved plays, and he loved that one. So we got some joy to be able to please Prabhupada.
You've done Prabhupada memories of yourself, right? Have you recorded yourself?
Not on camera, but if you read volume 5, I write a pretty elaborate description of my memories of Prabhupada. Although I don't include that one for some reason.
Yeah, no, you have to make another film of yourself. Just let it roll and tell this story. That would be cool. Yeah. So this verse is really talking about indications of the auspiciousness of the Pandavas, that they're going to be successful in the battle. The verse before, verse 13, Bhishma, out of a sense of duty to Duryodhana, and I don't exactly remember the details. I believe that was Bhishma on Duryodhana's payroll or something. He was financing Bhishma. That the Bhishma felt obliged to Duryodhana to encourage him in the battle, because that's what that verse said, that Bhishma felt obliged to encourage Duryodhana to fight. But then in the verse that Siddhanta Prabhu was just reading Prabhupada's comment on, it was saying that there were kettle drums and various musical instruments. Prabhupada said some of these musical instruments don't exist today, but he said even today, or more recent times, the soldiers would play bugles and different instruments in order to enliven each other to fight in the battle. So that's what we're reading about right now, how there's, on the Pandava side, there's this encouragement that they're going to be victorious on the battlefield. So I'm trying to understand, Siddhanta Prabhu, what's the connection between the explosion in the temple room and this verse?
Well,
Please.
if you put the verse one I just read back up.
Okay. Yeah.
I think there's some correlation there, but not necessarily the bomb. Although we did use the bomb as they might have used on the battlefield there, but
Okay. Maybe it's just
but for a spiritual purpose. So this is, he's talking about that people flock, that about people being cheated,
okay.
that you can become an incarnation. So Pondraka is
Like
an
Pondraka.
example of somebody who tried to cheat, and Krishna took care of him. Krishna didn't like people who imitated his position, nor did Prabhupada like people who were pretending. He didn't like. Several times there were instances where Guru Maharaji would be brought up in a lecture.
I remember before I met the devotees and I was reading a Penguin Classic version of the Gita and autobiography of yogi, related books like that. I was around 17, 18 years old. And I came across a magazine on Guru Maharaji and he had a mukut on his head, like a deity crown. And he was in a circle with a bunch of young ladies doing Rasa Leela. And I had no idea what Rasa Leela was, but I just found it was strange to see this pudgy Indian guy with a crown on his head, like a prince or something. And, all these young ladies that he had in a circle. So that's what you're talking about. The prophet said, I'm the kicking god, right? And I shall kick in his face with a boot.
Yeah, he also mentioned how, and it's part of the memory series, how Prabhupada, one particular lecture, Prabhupada was talking about how abominable abortion is.
Oh.
And then somebody brought up Guru Maharaji. And then Prabhupada said, yes, his mother should have finished him in the womb.
Oh, wow.
Gosh.
Hare Krishna.
So I went just the opposite of what he was preaching.
Yeah.
For this person, better off for him and the planet if he goes on to his next life before he comes out of the womb.
Wow. Prabhupada was no pushover.
And then Prabhupada would also
He's
mention
so
how if his cheating propensity is such that if he thinks he's God, how can he be God if he's complaining of a toothache? Because at that time, at that moment, there was mention that he had to go to the dentist because he had a horrible toothache. So if he's God, how does God have a pain? How does God have a toothache? That means he is not God.
Did Prabhupada talk somewhere about such a Sai Baba, another cheater?
Such a Sai Baba.
Yeah.
I don't remember an exact instance, but he, occasionally would mention how people like him could produce, and he mentioned about producing some gold or some jewels like magic.
Vibhuti.
And people and Prabhupada would mention how people who are foolish accept that as a symptom of God. But it's like a magician.
Yeah, he was saying they don't think about the God that produces entire gold mines, but he has some magical ability. They can produce a few little trinkets and that they're impressed with, but they don't think about, how impressive Krishna is.
I'm just bringing up a story that Purijan told me.
Okay.
About Guru Maharaji, if you want to stay on that topic.
Sure.
Pretend gods.
He was also quite critical of the Maharishi Mahashogi selling mantras.
I saw him actually, and he was really big in England when I was about 15. I stayed in an ashram of which was family friends actually, who were in their early 20s. They were friends with him and they actually lived next to him. They moved and lived next to him in Malibu. I also went there.
Wow.
And I saw him in Germany. I was sort of pretty impressionable and searching and everything. And I went to Germany and there are about 25,000 people there. I mean, there definitely was an atmosphere, albeit, it was bogey yogis and all the rest of it. But, if you were trying to sort of extract yourself from the Judeo-Christian thing, it was it was a sort of curious adventure, put it that way. You know, I mean, I never found his people objectionable. They were always very kind, and everyone used to pranam and say Jai Satchidanand. And, you know, I mean, for me, it was a sort of cracked door, if you will, into something other than Judeo-Christianity. So it was kind of interesting to me.
But Maharishi he is sly businessman. He said, this is not a religion. My former wife, her sisters, mother and father each paid $5,000 to Maharishi to learn how
They're
to
really into
fly,
yeah.
how to fly,
Yeah.
activate Kundalini.
Yeah. But Guru Maharaji wasn't, they didn't have that same kind of thrust that the Maharishis have, because actually I used to lease the property of a woman who was quite sort of high up in the Maharishis here, and she ran for politics on his political party and everything. But everyone they mixed with, you know, down at Esalen and all these places, they were really, you know, sort of like the Tibetan following, actually. They're all kind of the Hollywoodiana types with big bank balances and BMWs, you know. They're very into the money, that lot. Anyway, I digress.
Here's a story from Burijan if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
This is a lead up to the part about Guru Maharaji, but it's significant. It's a nice story about Prabhupada. In 1974, Prabhupada stayed in the Hong Kong Hilton in the same suite where the Shah of Iran had stayed. The suite was so large that we held a press conference there for Prabhupada. It was quite full with reporters, and they asked him many questions. The first question was, you preach against materialism and the acquirement of wealth, but here you are living in this very posh penthouse. The reporter was trying to point out what appeared to him to be hypocrisy in what Prabhupada was doing. Prabhupada's consciousness was so clear, and he was never intimidated by any kind of question, direct or otherwise, trying to catch him. First, Prabhupada started explaining philosophically that everything belongs to Krishna. Therefore, renunciation means to use everything in Krishna's service. You can imagine the reporter's face went completely blank when that one was presented to him. Then Prabhupada decided on a different tact to respond to this challenge. He said, for me, as far as I'm concerned, I can live under a tree. Practically speaking, Prabhupada did that in 1977 when he was living in Bhubaneswar. He was bathing out of a well in the mornings at the Kumbh Mela. He didn't have that kind of attachment to opulence. Prabhupada said, but as far as I'm concerned, I can live under a tree. But if I lived under a tree and invited you all to a press conference, would you have come? No. Complete silence. The point was made. It was obvious to them too. It was such a wonderful answer. Who could have thought of such an answer like that? Then one reporter asked about Guru Maharaji. I think at that time, the Guru Maharaji people had a place right across the street from where the devotees had a place.
Where was this? Where?
In Hong Kong.
Oh, okay.
And if it wasn't there, it was someplace else. So don't quote me yet on that one.
All right.
But at one point, they had a place right across the street. Then reporter asked about Guru Maharaji. Reporters naturally like to report on controversy because that makes the news. Controversy, negative talk, and especially if one big spiritual leader is criticizing another big spiritual leader, that makes for a great headline. The reporter asked, what do you think about Guru Maharaji? Prabhupada declined to answer. Prabhupada said, just ask about Krishna consciousness. We don't know anything about this. Then the reporter asked again. Prabhupada for a second time declined to answer. Then the reporter was quite insistent, and he asked a third time. For some reason, Prabhupada decided this time to answer him. He decided to answer him in a very straightforward, forceful way. He said, he is God, he is a cheater, and a dog. But Krishna is the biggest cheater, and he will be cheated by Krishna.
Wow.
The reporters were so happy because this was just the kind of controversy that made headlines. It made the Hong Kong Standard the next day.
Jai Prabhupada.
Trouble in Paradise. That was
Mhm.
that was the name of the article. Guru of Hare Krishna movement calls Guru Maharaji a dog. It was something like that. They loved it, and it even made it into Time magazine. The next day, some local Indian leaders came to Prabhupada to complain about what he had said. And this is Burijan speaking. First, I interrupted. I wanted to defend Prabhupada for making a controversial statement. Then Prabhupada said, "Be quiet," basically telling me to mind my own business and watch how he would deal with it. I listened very carefully to what Prabhupada said. He explained to them that we don't have any business criticizing people. But when someone says he is God, but he is without power, and people are believing that, so foolish. Prabhupada had followed some news story and explained, and he doesn't even question himself. I get a toothache, and then he has to go to the hospital to cure the pain from his toothache. He doesn't question himself. How can I be God if I have to go to the hospital for a toothache? Prabhupada very patiently and calmly explained to them why he had made that comment about Guru Maharaji, and they were convinced by the end. It was wonderful. Later on, of course, the Guru Maharajis responded in the newspaper with their own version of the issue and commented that Prabhupada was wrong for criticizing. Then I responded to their letter to the editor, and I sent that to Prabhupada. Basically, I used the argument, quote, "You may have your opinion and I may have my opinion, but the lawyers in the law court argue based on the law," unquote. So Prabhupada's argument was based on Shastra. Prabhupada appreciated it. He actually distributed my response letter to others.
Nice. Prabhupada also liked the response to Hangsadutta to that. I think his name was Professor Kapoor. It's found in the back of Life Comes from Life about whether the scientist can produce life. And he says, Prabhupada was saying, I say the chicken is a better scientist than the scientist because the chicken can do that, but the scientist cannot. So Prabhupada liked it when his disciples could defeat opposition.
Yeah, another time, or actually after that lecture, not a different lecture, sorry. This was in 72 in the Philippines. There was this temple there that was started by Sudama Vipra Swami.
Did you ever meet him?
No, I did not.
Me neither.
So anyway, there was a lecture there at the Manila Intercontinental in Makati. And that was where President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos, had declared martial law and outlawed large meetings, but they held it there anyway. And after the lecture, Prabhupada asked for questions. And Burijan remembered after all these years, one incredible response. One person stood up in front of the microphone and he began to speak, not asking a question, but just rambling on about his own philosophy, talking on and on and on. He was relishing that sweet taste of holding the microphone, and he just kept on going and going.
Oh, no.
Prabhupada patiently listened to him for a while, and then he said, "Are you finished yet?" The person said, "No, I am not finished."
Oh, no.
This story really shows Prabhupada's expertise. Prabhupada let him go on. The man kept on speaking and speaking and speaking. For those of us who were listening, it felt like he was going on for hours. After a while, maybe several minutes, Prabhupada said, you are finished yet?" The man said no again. Again, Prabhupada just patiently sat there and let him go on and on. After a bit longer, Prabhupada said, "Are you finished yet?" The man said yes. Then Prabhupada swung into the microphone. "Then sit down." He got the audience completely on his side. Everyone in the hall, including the devotees, cheered and clapped after that. He was just so expert. Then he said something that proved to be so significant for me. This is Burijan.
Yeah.
I always want to pass this on to anyone who follows Prabhupada and would like to do some service for him. He said, "It is my desire that Krishna consciousness be spread throughout the universe. You please help me to fulfill this desire." Burijan said, "When I think of this, I realize he didn't even say the world. He said the universe."
Wow.
Prabhupada's desire was so big and so compassionate that it could accommodate anyone who wants to do any service to please Prabhupada, because the universe is so big.
Mhm.
It extends from one person next door to anyone. There is just so much opportunity for everyone and anyone to find some service to fulfill Prabhupada's desire to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the universe.
Wow. We have our service cut out for us.
And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to go back to where we were. And let's see, share screen. Okay, so I'm just trying to see, how did Prabhupada segue from the encouragement that the forces of the Pandavas. I'm just trying to see how, because it's been a while since we started reading, how we segued. Okay, so the conch shells of the Pandavas of Krishna and Arjuna was a transcendental sound vibration. He was giving hope to the Pandava side, and that Krishna, no one can explain Krishna himself. And then so he was talking about how we cannot hear about Krishna from the conditioned souls because they have imperfect knowledge. And one of their qualities is cheating. Okay, that's how Prabhupada segued into this point about imposters and cheating. And we have to hear about Krishna from Krishna. Okay, very good. So Krishna Chandra Prabhu. So the Maya is very strong. Please continue.
So the Maya is very strong. Maya always dictates so that we may be cheated. Why? You are taking Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Don't take. He is ordinary man. You can be also equal with Krishna. You also become God. You become also incarnation. This is going on. And people flock there because they want to be cheated. What Krishna says, they will not accept. Krishna says, Sarva Dharmam Parityagya Mam Ekam Sharanam. Bhagavad-gita 1866. Only take to Krishna consciousness. Sarva Dharman. Because any dharma that which is not approved by the Supreme Lord Krishna, that is not dharma. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.19. A human being or a demigod or very exalted person cannot manufacture dharma. That is not possible. Real dharma is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that real dharma is stated in the Bhagavad-gita. Sarva dharman parityagya mam ekam sharanam vraja. 1866. Just surrender unto me. This is real dharma. Surrender to Krishna and follow his instructions. Your life will be perfect.
Nandapatni.
Because,
Or let me just ask, excuse me, let me ask Siddhanta for a second. Do you have any references, Siddhanta Prabhu, into surrendering to Krishna in all of your interviews? Anything come to mind?
A topic of surrendering?
Yeah.
Or not surrendering?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay. Can Nandapatni read in the meantime?
Yeah, sure, of course.
okay.
Go ahead.
Because you follow the perfect instruction, therefore you are also perfect. Simple process. To become perfect, we have to follow the perfect instruction. So in the Bhagavad-gita, there is perfect instruction. And if we take it as it is and follow it, then we become perfect. To become perfect is not very difficult job. But because we don't want to become perfect, because we want to be cheated, we do not become perfect. This is the difficulty. And so we should know from the very beginning that Krishna is transcendental and all his activities, they're all transcendental. Although Krishna appears just like an ordinary human being, he does not appear like ordinary human being, because Krishna, when he was 3 months old only, he killed the Putana Rakshashi. A 3-month-old child cannot kill such a giant demon. It's not possible. Krishna, when he was 6 or 7 years old, he lifted the Govardhan hill.
Did you find it, Siddhanta Prabhu?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, this is on the topic of surrendering. This is a story from Shrutakirti.
Oh, nice.
Every morning while Prabhupada was staying in Juhu, he would go for his walk. As he would go out the door, there would normally be 20 to 30 devotees waiting for him, since most of them lived in Juhu. This one morning, the devotees were all paying their obeisances on the ground, except for one boy, who remained standing with his hands together in a respectful, prayerful position. Prabhupada just kept walking past him, and he looked at me and said, "This is the beginning of his fall down."
Oh, wow.
Although Prabhupada would do his best to correct our deficiencies and provide what was best for our spiritual life, I believe it was always very important to never lose focus that we were dealing with a pure devotee. Prabhupada would so many times call us into the room to tell us, "Wake up, stop sleeping." He knew he had to keep us focused. So, the purport is that, in this one person's mind, he might have been thinking, oh, he's being respectful to Prabhupada, but there are degrees of surrender. And Prabhupada saw that it was a sign of the beginning of his fall down, that he wouldn't pay his full obeisances on the ground as everyone else was doing.
He was getting lax.
And, I think also in maybe the Nectar Devotion, it says something similar to that, where, when you enter the temple and when you leave a temple room, you're supposed to pay your full obeisances, Namo Om Vish, and then Dandavats. And if we become slack and just kind of Namo Om Vish, and actually Shrutakirti has another story very similar to that, if you want me to.
Yeah, sure.
That.
Also, doesn't Udayananda have a similar one about that regarding Gayatri? Before chanting Gayatri?
Yeah, he had just gotten second initiation in Mayapur, and he went off in the morning to chant his Gayatri. And before he began chanting, he saw Prabhupada get out of, or come down over the hill or the pathway or something. And as soon as he saw him, he paid his obeisances to Prabhupada.
Yeah.
But Prabhupada didn't see him pay his obeisances.
Oh.
And then Udayananda started chanting his Gayatri.
Yeah.
And in the middle of his Gayatri, Prabhupada had walked down to where he was by the Ganga or somewhere, wherever he was chanting his Gayatri. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, "He does not offer his obeisances to the guru." And, so Udayananda realized that. And Udayananda, after he finished and went back to the temple, the devotees who were walking with Prabhupada told Uday that Prabhupada chastised him, that even if you're in the middle of your Gayatri and you see the spiritual master, you need to pay your obeisances. So he learned that lesson. So it's another form of surrender. What we think is a proper, that's why, to have the Acharya on the planet is so important. He tells us the particulars about how to engage and advance in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, we're just speculating. Right. And in one sense, this story right here will give you another example of how we tend to speculate about surrender.
Yeah.
One day, Nitai came in, offered his obeisances, and asked Prabhupada a question about the Sanskrit. Prabhupada answered him, and Nitai left the room. A few minutes later, Nitai came back in, and he offered his obeisances, but this time very quickly, with maybe 5 or 6 seconds before he raised back up to ask his question. Prabhupada answered, and Nitai left the room. Shortly thereafter, Nitai came in for the third time and put his head on the ground for 1 second before popping back up to ask his question. Prabhupada looked at him and said, "You offer your obeisances. It is not hatchet." And Prabhupada was moving his arm up and down, making a chopping motion. Shruti Kirti said, "I was shocked by the intensity of Prabhupada imitating the cutting down of a tree with a hatchet."
Thank you again. Wow.
Not long after that incident, Nitai was asking Prabhupada for permission to go to Radhakund to take shelter of another guru, his Svarup guru. That was a lesson for me, Shruti Kirti said. If I went into Prabhupada's room with lunch and one chapati after another, I would make sure that each time I went in, I would put the chapati down on his plate, offer full dandavats, and leave. In a day's time, whether I entered into Prabhupada's room 20, 30, 40 times, he never said, "You had your quota today. You don't need to pay your obeisances again." Prabhupada never said that to Shruti Kirti. But on the other hand, when Paramahamsa, who was at least 6 feet tall, came in, he paid full dandavats, reciting prayers to the spiritual master besides the pranams. The third time he came in that day, he again paid full dandavats, and Prabhupada said, "Sit up." Prabhupada said, "How are we going to get anything done with you lying on the floor?" So Prabhupada always knew how to deal with each individual as he knew the heart of every disciple. So there's no hard and fast rules. So it depends on each individual's consciousness.
Yeah.
But there are the guidelines. So, and I catch myself sometimes going to the temple room, and then I sit up because I'm impatient. But that's going to lead to my inattentiveness, and leads to so many other things. And I always remember that verse from the Nectar Devotion, but still I'm nonsense. So remembering that verse doesn't help sometimes, at least me. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from you, Nandapatni, before we move on?
Well, just a minor comment, and that is the memories of, in the early days, just living in the temple, just how many times one did actually pay one's full obeisances. And also, we were very much in the habit of paying obeisances to each other.
That's right.
With full, the full pranam mantra of Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Or we said Panchakalpa Tarubhascha. But one would do that, I don't know, 6 to 10 times a day, because it was considered so respectful to encounter one another in that way. I have a lot of memories of that.
Right.
Yeah.
That enthusiastic spirit. One God brother, Dharma Prana Prabhu, when I'd see him in the morning, he turned it into a contest where he would try to bow down to me before I could bow down to him. So as soon as I'd see him, I immediately try to hit the deck. So we were like in a transcendental competition, who could pay obeisances to the other one quicker. It was fun. It was sweet. It was there's some camaraderie there, some friendship there. A nice mood. Yeah, it's valuable for me to hear this because I live here on my own, and I don't offer I offer my obeisances to my little altar here, but I probably could do it a few more times a day. It would be good for me. Okay, let's see if we
Hare
can.
Krishna.
Hey, welcome back.
Aloha.
Seeing your little black box,
Aloha.
not knowing
We
what
just came from the doctor. Sorry, we're driving.
Okay.
So I'm talking about obeisances. It's really interesting one. Gargamuni printed not too long ago. I wonder if Siddhanta has that, where Gargamuni, Prabhupada came in the room and this front, and Gargamuni then pay obeisances. And
Yeah.
he said, well, I do it if I feel like. Prabhupada said, you do it and then you'll feel it. And so,
Yeah.
and then we have, of course,
Brahmananda told that story about him as well.
Yeah, we have it in this book, I believe. But Gargamuni repeated it. Have you read it recently? Maybe he was quoting his brother.
No, I mean, it's his story, so it's appropriate that he tells the story.
Brahmananda.
Right. So, because it was a big deal at the beginning, all this hippies and intellectuals and like that. I mean, we surrendered to no one.
Right.
I think actually you recorded Siddhanta recently, or maybe, I don't know, some time ago, not too long ago, Satyarup Maharaj talking about this. How he didn't come to the Sunday feast because he thought he had to be invited.
Right.
Remember that?
Of course.
And also about the obeisances and like that. So the story came out. And then there is etiquette, of course, like Chaitanya Charitamrita, what was it? If somebody has Harinam, then we should pay full obeisances to them. Others, we pay. I'm sorry.
Well, the Satsvarup story was not so much obeisances, but it was that, we were talking about surrender. We were reading from Prabhupada's lecture about surrender. And Satsvarup was a shy personality, and he always felt like he had to be invited personally to come to a Sunday feast or come to a class, and he wouldn't come on his own. And Prabhupada saw that reticence on his part, that he was being shy, wasn't coming forward with full surrender from his own heart, and always feeling that he had to be invited. Otherwise, he was too shy to come. And so Prabhupada said to him, it's a classic line. Prabhupada said, if you love me, I will love you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to come forward with your first showing of your surrender or love for me, and then I will reciprocate with love.
And then didn't he later on say, and you're invited to the feast or something like that? It was very sweet.
Yeah.
The exchange. Yeah.
And then obeisances, of course, with Gargamuni and Brahmananda, Prabhupada told them to pay obeisances to their mother.
Right.
And then when they came there, they went to her house, and then she opened the door. She looked out. She couldn't see him. Then she looked down. They were on the ground. And she said, "Get up! What are you doing?" So they took Prabhupada's direction to heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the question of saying Gayatri and the spiritual master appears, that's the goal of our Gayatri mantra. When we say Guru mantra, because that's a way. The instruction is that we should have Vishramba. Vishramba means intimate relation with Guru. So I asked this from a senior God brother, and said, how do I do that? I mean, it's like, look, Prabhupada is so many. And he said, isn't he not in your mantras when you chant them? So that's the goal of the Ishtadev, or the deity of the mantra. Each mantra will manifest the deity. It's like the Kama Gayatri will manifest Krishna. And Guru Gayatri will manifest Guru.
So if the Guru shows up while you're saying your Gayatri mantra, then you attained the goal of the mantra. So you should immediately pay obeisances to the Guru instead of
Instead of
Gayatri, say, this is so.
Instead of continuing the Gayatri mantra and ignoring the Guru. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
That was like Udayananda's.
Yeah, what's that story? Where Siddhanta, maybe you can help me, please, where someone wanted to offer some boga to Prabhupada, and they were offering, I think, to his picture or something. Prabhupada said, I'm
Oh,
right.
that's right.
You can offer it to me. You don't have to offer
Right.
a picture. Yes, I'm right here. Do you know?
Well, there was a story, and I don't know if it's that one, but one similar, where Prabhupada was on a train, and somebody, I think, brought a plate of cookies, maybe. Don't quote me on the type of food, but they brought it to Prabhupada, and a devotee said, "Oh, but Prabhupada, shouldn't you offer those first?" And Prabhupada said, "You don't have to have any."
But it's like you said, Siddhanta, it's no one size fits all. And like the spiritual master, very expert at scrutinizing your heart.
Right.
My first meetings with Prabhupada, I was so shy, I just could not utter a word. So he kept reading my mind and responding. And then he came to San Diego and stayed at our apartment, and in '75, and we had a door that was bevel glass door, and I pulled, for some reason, I just like pulled the rugs, polished the floors, all this stuff, put really prominent his books. We had nice show, we did some nice work, and the door was an old door, and it had the doorknob was painted, but then I scrape a little bit, and I realized it was crystal doorknob. Anyhow, we cleaned the whole thing up, and so you could see in. And I made Srila Prabhupada a table, and Prabhupada was complaining that all the tables that he sat at, they were, every time he would put his foot or push with the knee, and the table would go forward, sliding.
Slide, yeah, too slippery.
Yeah, highly polished floor. So I made it a table and figured out the distance, and that thing wasn't going anywhere. So I get there in the evening, just like, kind of wanted to associate with, and I said, oh, I wonder if he likes the table. And as I was thinking that, he put up his foot and pushed, got the table, pushed the table. I was like, oh, okay. And then he started to say Gayatri. And so, of course, I pay obeisance outside the door. And so I sat there were two steps going up to the door, the front door, and you can see through. So Prabhupada was saying Gayatri. And I got a chance to sit and say Gayatri. Oh, he's saying Gayatri. So, but what did I know? It was just so long ago, and as I read, there's all that. But most important, I think the point that you made is the guru is so important. A living guru did. You probably have this story when Tamal Krishna says, Prabhupada, what was there a need? We got the books, and we got your books, and was there a need of Guru? Prabhupada?
Wait a minute, I don't understand Tamal's question. He's saying, what is there a need for a guru if we have your books? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we have the scriptures, we have the books.
What need is there for a guru?
Yeah. So it was a question, and that's expected from the disciples. Any doubt you have, the spiritual master will clear it. Okay. So Prabhupada stretched across the table. Now he was sitting and facing Prabhupada. Prabhupada stretched across the table and pulled his ear. See, the book cannot do this.
Right. I
don't have that one.
I took a course with this one Mata.
Oh.
Her name is Devaki, Mother Devaki. She's a German living in Australia many years. And one of the courses she gave is she stressed this term anugatya, that a Vaishnav is always meant to be under the shelter of another Vaishnav, like a Shiksha Guru, and simultaneously we must always be giving shelter to others. And that was an interesting seminar that she gave. So the point I'm making is that although we don't have Prabhupada here pulling our ear anymore, unless you want to say, well, but every time we read Prabhupada's purports, he is pulling our ear. You could say that. But I guess where I'm going with this is that I don't think any of us, especially me, should think I'm so advanced that I don't need Shiksha Gurus in my life.
Well, that's Rupa Goswami said at least 5 Shiksha Guru days we should adopt, we should surrender to.
Really? 5?
Rupa Goswami's. I was studying Bhajan Rahasya, this Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book, and mostly it's all Rupa Goswami's pretty much. Bhaktivinoda Thakur expanded on that. He said at least 5 Shiksha Guru days. So well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lord Caitanya associates, he would send people to different Shiksha Gurus.
Uh-huh.
It was, like Jiva Goswami, he was with Nityananda, and he was, they would go send them to other people.
Right.
And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the example is that he did have a Diksha Gurudev, but he never really, his guide was Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj.
Right.
His Diksha Gurudev, and our line goes there. It doesn't go to Bipin, and then Bipin something, I can't forget his soul.
Bipin Bihari Goswami.
Bipin Bihari Goswami. Yeah. So it says it's an offense to think that in Vishnu Tattva, to think that Krishna is different, that each incarnation is different. They might act it with a speciality, that Maryada in the case of Rama, or the rules and regulations, something like that. But we never should think that way. And in Vishnu Tattva, then they're all one, meaning they're all equal. But when it comes to Rasa Tattva, then Krishna has an extra 4 qualities. So that will make him a little different. So it's very, this science is very subtle. It's a science.
Let me just read it. It has to do, was it Prabhupada? He was saying that the measure of your advancement in Krishna consciousness has to do with the amount of love. How is it worded exactly?
Attachment and that. That's Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was Chaitanya. That the measure isn't knowledge or learning all the slokas or the rules, but it's your attachment and your love
to Krishna. And that when it becomes very ripe, then it's mamata, or possessiveness. Krishna is mine.
Speaking about Shiksha Guru relationships, before everybody came tonight, I sang this song about Guru Parampara, and it was interesting because it described that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was the Shiksha Guru of Baladev Vidyabhushan, to whom he taught Bhagavatam, and Jagannath Das Babaji, who was a very prominent acharya after Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, was the beloved Shiksha Guru of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So I found it interesting to see that, to be reminded that in our line, Shiksha Gurus are appreciated as much as Diksha Gurus.
Yeah, that should be, like I was saying, they cannot make distinction between them. It would be offensive.
But in our case, Srila Prabhupada is our Diksha and our Shiksha Guru. But we only have one Diksha Guru. We can have many Shiksha Gurus.
Right.
And the case of Srila Prabhupada is like, when Bhagavan Maharaj, I was listening to him, when he pays his obeisances, my Diksha and Shiksha Gurudev Srila Prabhupada. Because yes, he had very personal instructions from Srila Prabhupada and guidance. Yeah. And he paid his respect to Gaur Govinda Maharaj, who's such an elevated god brother of ours.
Is that Bhagavad?
Bhagavad Maharaj. Yeah.
I invited him tonight, but he was busy honoring prasadam at the
Oh,
time.
Oh,
But maybe we'll luck out next time.
he gave the most. Ask him. I want to ask him to write even a booklet or a recording of, because he was so close to Gaur Govinda Maharaj. He was witness. He was sent by Prabhupada to assist Gaur Govinda Maharaj, to do both. Actually, he said, maybe I higher rank, but I didn't really, because this personality was way beyond me. That's what Bhagavad Maharaj says. But so he was a treasurer at one point, or he had the monies, and went to the tourist. Because they were running out of money. He said, Maharaj, we're gonna have to go. This story he tells, it's just wonderful. I wanted to ask him. I was thinking of writing to do that. Maybe you can ask him to repeat it. But he said it this week. He actually talked about Gaur Govinda
maybe
Yeah.
Siddhanta or
We'll try to get
some
him.
of Bhagavad's memories. Huh?
We'll try to get him. Dvija Garanga, would you like to read a little bit so we can progress through this class?
Sure. Where are we? Just
Yeah,
mythology?
Devotee,
I
mythology.
thought that was Prabhu's.
We're going
We're
to
going
finish.
to a gray zone that I know we're gonna cross. So
Thanks for
I
coming.
know.
We'll see
for now.
you. Haribol.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Yes.
Haribo.
Thank you for your
Haribo.
association.
Jai. Haribo.
So what?
Thank you very much for your helping each other.
Shall I go ahead? Looks like everybody's leaving.
Please, Dvija.
Mythology.
No, so
Okay.
difficulty for Krishna.
Oh, sorry. So what is the difficulty for Krishna? If Krishna can float big, gigantic planets in the air, just like cotton swab floating, so it is very difficult for Krishna to lift a mountain with his hand, with his finger. That is not difficult for Krishna. But those who want to be cheated, when Krishna showed his transcendental strength, they don't believe it. Another cheating. They'll admit, these are, what is called? Devotee, mythology, Prabhupada, mythology. As if Vyasadeva wrote this Srimad Bhagavatam to put before these rascals some mythology, some imaginary things. Just see how they want to be cheated. Such an exalted personality like Vyasadeva, who has given us the Vedic literature, he presented something which is imaginary. What business has he got? Therefore, sometimes these cheated people, they deny to accept that Bhagavatam is written by Sri Vyasadeva. But those who are actually acharyas, those who can guide us, like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhavacharya, big Caitanya Mahaprabhu, they do not say like this, that it is mythology, it is imaginary. They accept it. They accept as it is.
So we have to follow these Mahajans. Mahajano yena kata sapanta dharmasya tattvam nihito guhayam. That's actually from the Mahabharata, although it's cross-referenced here with Madhya Lila, but the source of that is Mahabharata. We have to follow great personalities, acharyas, Acharya Van Purusho Veda, Chandogya, Upanishad 6142. One who is God, one who has taken shelter of Acharya, bona fide spiritual master, he knows Acharya Van Purusho Veda because he is receiving the right knowledge from the right source. Acharya, evam parampara praptam imam rajarshyo vidu. Acharya means by disciplic succession. As Krishna says, disciplic succession, all the acharyas will say the same thing. They will not change. They will not interpret. They can explain, but the original fact is not distorted. That is Acharya. Acharya will never say that, quote, Krishna is material. Krishna, there was no such thing as Krishna. There was no such battle of Kurukshetra. These are all imaginary. So if we don't want to be cheated, then we should take Krishna as he is presenting himself, as it is confirmed by the Acharyas. Then our knowledge is perfect. So here it is said, Tata Shvetar Hayaryukte Mahati Syandaneshtito Madhava Pandavaschaiva Divyo Shanko Pradat Matuhu. Bhagavad-gita 114. That's the verse we're studying right now. Krishna and his devotee Arjuna, they are on the same platform. Therefore, Madhava and Pandava, they blew their transcendental conch shell. This is not ordinary. Krishna Chandra?
Oh, yes. Excuse me. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side. This is the sounding, divyo. They are also sounding their conch shell, even Bhishma, but that cannot be compared with the conch shells of Madhava and Pandava. Arjuna, associates, they are also equally powerful. Nobody can be associates of Krishna without being very, very much advanced. Just like fire can mix with fire, similarly, water can mix with water. Similarly, unless one is transcendentally advanced, he cannot be associate of Krishna. The Narottam Das Thakur sings, Gongera Sangi Gane, Nitya Siddha Bhulimane, Sejai Brajendra Nandana Pash, Gorangera Duti Pada, Shloka 3. Gorangera Sangi Gane, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna and his associates, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, all the devotees. So Narottam Das Thakur says, so all these associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should be known. They are also of the same category. Gaurangera Sangi Gane, Nitya Siddha Bholi Mane.
Nandapatni.
This word Nityasiddha is significant. Nityasiddha and Nityabhada. There are two kinds of living entities. Nityabhada means ever conditioned. Ever conditioned means those who are in the material world. They do not know when they came in touch with the material world, and neither they do know when they will be liberated. They're called Nityabhada, ever conditioned. And similarly, there are Nityasiddhas. Nityasiddhas means they never came in contact with the material world, this material world. And even they come here for some business, they do not forget their position. That is Nityasiddha. Try to understand. There are two kinds of living entities, Nityasiddha and Nityabhada. Nityabhadas are within this material world, beginning from Brahma down to the small ant, insignificant ant. They are all Nityabhadas. Anyone who's in this material world, Nityabhada. And Nityasiddhas, they belong to the spiritual world. They never come in contact with this material world, and even they come for some business under the order of the Supreme Lord. They do not touch these material qualities. They remain always transcendental, as Krishna remains always transcendental, even though he's in this material world. Similarly, Krishna's Nityasiddha associates, they're also transcendental. They never touch this material world.
Jagaranga Prabhu.
So try to understand the position of Krishna. Krishna is Narayana Para, transcendental. Para Avyaktat, that is Purushottam Yoga in the Bhagavad-gita. Krishna has said, anyone who has understood me, Ajam Avyayam, Ajam, I never take birth in this material world. Neither I am deteriorated by material contact. He knows me perfectly. That is called Purushottam. Purush Uttama. Uttama. Uttama means not of this material world. Ut. Ut means above, and Tama means this darkness. So Uttama means above this darkness. So Uttama Purush, Purush Uttama. Purusha, we are also. Purusha means enjoyer. Prakriti means enjoyed. So actually, we are not Purusha. We are Prakriti. That is stated in the Bhagavad-gita. Aparayam itastu vidhi me prakritim param jiva bhuta mahabaho yaye dharmandharyate jagat. 7.5 Bhagavad-gita. Aparayam, these material elements, bhumirapo nalo vayu, earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, bina me prakritir ashtada. These are separated energies, material energies of Krishna. They are also prakriti. As this material world is prakriti, similarly, there is another prakriti. Krishna gives information. Parayam itastu vidhi me prakritam param. But that is paraprakriti. So we are not Purush. We are prakritis. Although by materially dressed, we appear to be Purush. Actually, we are not Purush. Just like if you dress one woman like a man, that does not mean that she has become man. She is a woman. Appropriate for these days.
Oh, God. Yeah. No comment.
That's a big comment.
Oh, landmine.
Similar to Purusha, in the sense that we are trying to imitate the Supreme Purusha, Purushottam. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. We are trying to become imitation Krishna. Just like so many rascals, they declare that God, I am God. That is the last snare, I am God. First of all, we try to become enjoyer, like the head of a family, man, or a minister, or this and that. So many. Everyone is trying to become head enjoyer. At last, being baffled in every respect. He wants to become God. This is the last snare of Maya. Nobody can become God. He is Purushottam. We are Prakritis. Artificially, how we can become enjoyer. Prakriti means enjoyed. Enjoyer and predominator and the predominated. So Jiva Bhuta, we Jivas, we are all Prakriti. Purusha is only Krishna, all living entities. Vishnu Tattva is Purusha Tattva. And we are Shakti Tattva, marginal energy of Krishna. So energy is Prakriti. So Prakriti is not Purusha. So Mayavad philosophy is wrong. They pose them as Soham. I am the same. How you can be same? In the Shastra it is said that you living entity, you are Prakriti. How you can become same? You Purusha? This is mistake. Krishna Chandra.
Yes. How Prakriti, how a woman can become man. Artificially, one can become. Here also, so-called woman, they are also Purusha. They are thinking Purusha. Purusha means enjoyer. Here, woman is also thinking to enjoy. The so-called man is also thinking to enjoy. Everyone. Nobody wants to serve. Everyone wants to be served. Purusha attitude. Everyone wants to be served. Nobody wants to serve. This is the material conception of life. So when we agree to serve, not to be served, that is liberated person. When we agree to serve only, not to be served, not to accept service from others, but to serve others, that is real liberation. But here the material disease is that everyone is making plan how others will serve me. This is called Maya. This is called Maya. Maya means that artificially we want to be served. That is not possible. When we agree to serve, as Caitanya Mahaprabhu has given us the path of liberation, Jivera Svarupa Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. This is our position. We are eternal servant of Krishna.
Nandapatni?
I'm just going to make a quick comment there. It just reminds me of the kind of the weight of secular society, even though you have good humanitarians, let's say, who serve in medicine, or maybe they have actually quite a good service attitude, in their work, even in politics. But the general mood, it seems far more influenced by money, and secularism. So anyway, that's just a comment. It made me think about that.
Well, you can reinvent yourself as the world's greatest philanthropist, but it's just so that you can cash in more ways, right?
And also help others do the same.
Right.
Mm.
Be the world's greatest philanthropist is really a manifestation of Suridam Sarva Bhutanam. Krishna is the best friend of every living entity. And, I'm the next best friend of every living entity. Because I'm so charitable, right? 16th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, I shall conquer and I will give in charity. And
why next best? That should be better.
right.
Or Manasa, the common thing is, so Manasa Seva is Madhava Seva, that whole thing of serving mankind. That's such a common kind of, rebuttal of someone balking at the idea that there's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They just, this is the big one they throw at you, that no, I mean, you just got to be kind to everyone. That's the real deal. The Band-Aid solution, we used to call it in the early days.
Good without God. That's what they call it now.
What is it?
I'm good without God.
Oh, Lord, God. Anyway.
You don't need God. You can be good without God. Just look, as soon as you bring God in the picture, then so many wars, right? That's what they say.
Yeah, or all sorts of imagery comes up if you even mention the word God consciousness. I mean, people have a visceral reaction to it, it would seem. Anyway, sorry, I lost my place there. Gaura, where are we?
So when we engage.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So when we agree to serve?
Engage.
So when we engage.
Oh, engage, sorry. Engage brain. When we engage ourselves in the service of Krishna, the whole Bhagavad-gita is spoken on this basis. Arjuna was artificially declining to serve Krishna. Krishna wanted him to fight, and Arjuna was putting so many reasons how he could fight and kill the other side, who are his kinsmen, who are nephews, who are brothers, grandfather. This argument were being put. So that means he refused to serve Krishna. That's the material condition.
You want me to go now?
Please.
He was thinking on his own terms. He wanted to enjoy the family members, the so-called nephews, brothers, that if they are killed, then what is the use of this kingdom? Everyone break, but people think that I get kingdom, I enjoy myself. That is condition. But if a liberated soul will take the kingdom, but it will be used for Krishna's service, that is liberated. In this way, we should try to understand Krishna, Krishna's name, Krishna's fame, Krishna's associates, Krishna's activities, all divyam, transcendental. They are not material. Therefore, it is mentioned here, divyam, shankau, pradatmana. Divyau shankau, the shanka used by Krishna and Arjuna, they are not ordinary shanka. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Any final thoughts from anyone before we call it a night?
No, it's lovely. It's always so lovely to read Prabhupada's words, always.
Consoling.
Yeah.
A liberated soul will take the kingdom, but it'll be used for Krishna's service. That is liberated.
What strikes me is how deeply entrenched the alternative consciousness is. It has, I mean, even Arjuna was representing it by having so many apparently wonderful sounding reasons for not fighting, but Prabhupada is saying right there, it's being not Krishna conscious, it's the opposite.
Yeah, his attachment, I mean, they were all beloved. I mean, that's the biggest thing, isn't it, really, that people even have to jump that hurdle of attachment to their kith and kin. their offspring, their siblings, their cousins, etc., etc. I mean, that's the real hook, isn't it, in the material world?
Isn't it the same thing we were discussing a little earlier? And Nuri Hari and Bhavatarini were mentioned, talking about the, and everyone was talking about like the attachment. That's the measure of love is the real thing. So when it's reflected in this world, that creates our attachment, but it's actually the original attachment is the real thing.
Prabhupada was saying that when he was in India, he was trying to get parents to donate one of their sons to help him establish his devotees, but nobody wanted to do that. Oh my, he would say in classes that the parents wanted their son to become an engineer or a doctor, and what will you do if you become a sadhu? Like, how are you going to support your wife and children if you become a sadhu?
I know one of your godbrothers. Radhamadava, you know him, and from Toronto, he came to Toronto.
Yeah, he's Bengali.
He was 13 years old in a big family, and they put him into the ashram there in Mayapur, and he was resisting. He didn't really want to.
Huh. Wow. Cool. Yeah, I've met him.
And of course, there's the marvelous story of Giriraj Swami, who came of his own volition, and then his parents were, very, very well-off lawyers, and they offered Giriraj $1 million to not stay with Prabhupada.
Wow.
That's such a great story. And
Did he not end up with it as an inheritance also? Did he not end up with it as an inheritance at the end?
I think he did, yeah, when they deceased, for sure.
But I believe that his father met Prabhupada and they had a nice relationship.
They did, yeah, they did. And Prabhupada, he just played it so perfectly, because he actually, they came to India to almost, arguably, you could say, to sort of retrieve Giriraj. But Prabhupada said to Giriraj, no, you go off with your parents. You go off for a while with them. And so he did. They sort of went off to some hotel or something or other. But there was no way that that Giriraj was not going to be Prabhupada's.
Just see how much Prabhupada trusted Giriraj to tell him to do that, knowing that he would not leave Prabhupada's side.
And then actually he did end up charming the parents. They realized that their son actually was in good hands. It's just that they were they had their own ambitions for their child, and were tremendously attached, as most parents tend to be. What was that
term you used earlier? Starts with a V, I think. Vicariously. You parents live through their children vicariously.
Yeah, they can. It can be codependence.
But it's also a natural thing. A good parent cares about the future of the child, and if they're not enlightened about the ultimate goal of life, they're certainly going to have their own criteria of good things lined up for them if they don't understand what is this crazy stuff that this old guy from India all about.
Yeah. And also when people come from wealthy families, they don't they don't want their children to go off the rails.
Good point.
So that it's anyway, that's a whole other thing. But
on Monday we'll continue with the teachings of Lord Caitanya. We just have 1.5 chapters left, but these chapters are they're quite substantial, and it's a lot about Srimati Radharani. We finally come to the summum bonum of Ramananda Roy instructing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. More to look forward to.
Fantastic.
Okay, Prabhus, off we go.
Basis. Hari Hari Bol. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.